Andy Cooper from RMS Motoring, and this is the Tesla Model Y, finally in right-hand drive, finally available to the people in the world that drive on the left. So what's it like? Well, first of all, the car I have here in this dark blue colour is a long range, so it's dual motor, 55,000 pounds roughly, and 430-ish brake horsepower, 60 in 4.8 seconds. So typical Tesla, no slouch, and also being the long range, it has a good range, about 330-ish miles, and it's showing 310, 320 on a full charge. That's excellent. But of course the big thing about the Model Y is it is the Model 3 that people are saying has grown. It's not quite that, but it's extremely well packaged. It has a big tailgate, it's SUV shape, so it's a practical dog family car as well. People have been waiting for it. Typical Tesla styling as well, sort of like the Model 3. It's not for everyone's tastes. People can say, look, it's quite bland. It is quite bland, especially in this colour, but it's also inoffensive. It's not necessarily something that might just go out of fashion because it's maybe not in fashion, but that's fine. Slight differences. So they're starting to roll out what they call matrix headlights, which will be able to do beam splitting and stuff like that. The software doesn't support it, but the hardware's there for it. This is on the 19-inch wheels. You can option up to 20s on the long range. If you go for the performance, which is about 10 grand more, so this is 55k, the performance is 65k, you get 21-inch super turbine wheels. Run very high pressure, so I think 42, 43 psi from the factory. That's just the weight of the car. But it's fairly straightforward, sort of. If you know the Model 3, then the Model Y is quite similar in wing mirrors and the door handles that come out like this. Panoramic roof, although the panoramic roof in this car doesn't have the bar that separates the roof like in the Model 3. Bit of PPF to protect the back door here. And then just this sweeping roof line. Tesla haven't done what you see in the Mach-E and some of the other cars to try and make it more coupe-like with the sort of the black area to try and get that headroom. They get the headroom anyway because of the panoramic roof. But the styling is what you get from Tesla. There's not much to it. Of course, it's all about having a low CD and being as battery efficient as possible. So hence you have these plastic wheel trims covering what actually are alloy wheels under there, which are supposedly worth a couple of % of range having that on. But it's not really about how this car looks, it's how easy it fits into your day-to-day life and also what it drives like. These do drive differently from the Model 3, and we'll talk about that when I'm out on the road. It's a bigger car, it's a heavier car. This is tipping the scales beyond 2 tons, whereas the standard range Model 3 is about 1650, 1700 kilos, so it's quite a difference. This, of course, is why a lot of people will be interested in the Model Y. It's the SUV shape and having this enormous boot and a tailgate that you can through load stuff. Is it IKEA furniture? Is it a dog? Is it a pram? And like this is absolutely enormous. It's probably class leading. I think it's 850 litres of storage in here, and you can very quickly press 2 buttons and that flattens out. I think it's like 2,000 litres of storage, but it's absolutely enormous. And not only that, Tesla are very good at packaging, as they call it. In other words, using the lack of an internal combustion engine and all the gubbins that means is putting loads of pockets in and lots of storage. So underneath here I have an absolutely cavernous hole for charging cables and truck and stuff, and it splits as well, so you can have something solid sitting behind it and you can still split and the boot floor and get in your bits and pieces here, but just absolutely enormous pockets and great use of space. There is a camping mode that this car has. You could throw in a couple of sleeping bags and sleep in there if you want, and gaze in the stars through the panoramic roof. If that's your thing, but that use of space is just phenomenal. In here, and everything is typically Tesla. Minimalist, clean dash, hardly any buttons. It's identical to that of the Model 3 with the fantastic 15-inch centre display, but of course there's no heads-up display, there's nothing in front of the driver for speed, we know all that sort of stuff. In fact, it's worth watching my video on the Model 3 where I go into what's in the display in detail. We'll put that out in a pop-out banner. You don't have that same rake of windscreen that you have in the Model 3, which feels like you could see someone's knees, that it falls that close to the ground, but you do sit in a higher vantage point here in the Model Y. It is actually a considerably larger car, and especially the way it feels inside, but just a great feeling of space. And I don't know, it's difficult to tell. Do I prefer? I was driving the i4 M50 recently, and I'll put a link to that, which has your typical BMW switchgear, or do I prefer the minimalism of the Tesla? It's really one of those things. I think whatever car you drive, after you drive it for a while, you just get used to either, but it's certainly great. But where it gets more interesting is in the back. The back bench actually sits sort of the same sort of height as the front seats, but the front seats sit high and you can slide your feet under it. Makes it just very comfortable back here. I have absolutely stacks of headroom and the lovely panoramic roof. It just feels so spacious. 2 USB-Cs here. We have a armrest as well with a couple of cup holders, and it's fairly substantial. And of course you've seen the split folding seats, and we have some hooks and reading lights and stuff in the back as well. But it's just comfortable, spacious. You can actually change the angle of the back seats as well, so you can sit back a wee bit, which is kind of, it's fine, although my edge of my hair is just starting to feel the bar at the back of the panoramic roof. It's just very comfortable. It is a 4 adults, 5 adults on a long journey, no problem type of car. And with that huge boot, you have so much space for loads of luggage, dog, pram and all the rest. It seems like the perfect do-it-all SUV electric car, but let's see how it drives. So I'm on the road in the Model Y, and immediately I want to compare it to its older sibling, the Model 3. Very similar driving experience in here. All the controls are identical, and that's fine. Maybe doesn't have that very long windscreen like the Model 3 has, where you feel like someone can see your sandals as you're driving past them. But even still, you have a bit of an elevated driving position. This car is obviously taller and wider. Its dimensions are just generally that bit bigger. But great visibility, as you would expect from those other cars, lovely and bright with the panoramic roof. Decent seating position. So I'm just over 6 foot and very comfortable here. I can find my position absolutely fine. But with that larger cabin, it is a bit road noisy in here, and I'm getting tire roar, and that's partially because maybe there's no back shelf for that enormous boot. Tesla have fitted the car with double glazing though to try and reduce that road noise, but depending on what surface you're on, or some shell grip or some concrete, it can be quite noisy here in the cabin. That was actually my first impression of the car. I was surprised how much cabin noise there was, but over time I've got used to it and think, well, it's not terrible, it's just something that I've picked up. Something much more noticeable though is the compliance of the suspension, or lack of. A lot of the time it seems nervous and it doesn't want to settle unless you're on a very smooth A road or on a very smooth dual carriageway or a motorway. Otherwise it can be quite unsettled and it seems to be fidgeting and always trying to find its feet. Now I understand this car is over 2 tonne and it has to deal with all sorts going on, but the i4 M50 that I tested would have a similar amount of body control, but it would be much more comfortable in its own shoes on the road. I'm on a very straight, smooth A road at the moment, and I can just feel a bit of fidgeting from the suspension. And again, it's something that struck me when I first drove the car, and over time I've got used to. Interestingly, pressing on a smooth road, then the suspension does seem to settle a bit. It actually prefers to be moving quickly rather than taking it easy, which is kind of at odds to the type of car that it is, because really this has to be one of the most perfectly rounded family cars out there. So this is the dual motor. It's about 430 odd horsepower, but I don't feel shortchanged entirely over a performance. It's still very quick, it's still under 5 seconds to 60. If that's not fast enough for you, you can pay for an upgrade. I think it's between £1,500 and £2,000 to get a download upgrade. You should put your car details in to the screen and get a performance upgrade, and that'll drop that to 4.2 seconds. The performance is, for your £10,000 more over this car, is 60 and 3.5, so it's a halfway house between the two cars if you feel you need some more. But again, for moving the family about, and you maybe don't need to knock them about like rag dolls doing acceleration launches everywhere, this performance, as you can see, is excellent anyway, as is battery efficiency. So the range of the long range car is about 330, 340 miles. In reality it will probably do a true 300, and I think the performance is very close to that as well, but I've always got very good range out of Teslas. The Model 3 Performance I had did an honest 300 plus miles, and this is doing exactly the same. So it's very useful. So you've got range, you've got space, you've got backseat comfort, and counter to that you have maybe slightly fidgety suspension and a wee bit of road noise and things like that. But compared to the competition, this is probably the best packaged. So you have a frunk and you have fantastic cubbies and storage. The Tesla have. You have the amazing software. Unfortunately, in Northern Ireland we don't have the supercharger network yet, which is one of the big things if you wanted to do a road trip through Scotland or England, or even in the Republic of Ireland where there is some supercharging on the go. It just takes away from that charger anxiety that unfortunately with our rubbish infrastructure here in Northern Ireland we are stuck with. So some other things about the Model Y, mentioned the Matrix headlights. It has this biohazard filtration system which has a fancy HEPA filter which can filter out all sorts of toxins in the air. There is a special mode for it in the car. One thing you can't get on the Model 3 is a standard range plus. So you can only buy the 4-wheel drive cars which start at 55,000. You don't have that extra entry point, maybe £10,000 below that. Now some parts of the world do get that. Some parts of the world also get a partial shelf. Is it every car you would ever need? Is it all the car you ever need? maybe for family purposes, it's not far away. It's not perfect, but it's probably the best in class, and it's the one to beat, and it's the one that all the other manufacturers. That's why the Mach-E is so good, or the Ioniq 5 is so good, because they know that Tesla have it absolutely pegged here at the top. And the Model Y's been out in the US now for 2 or 3 years. It took a long time for the right-hand drive cars to make it as far as us, and they have been a huge sales success. But if you're thinking of a Model Y, the other good news is, at the moment, as of April 2022, it's very difficult to actually get your hands on some electric car stock. A lot of manufacturers are quoting 6 to 12 month lead times because of COVID and Ukraine and the state of the world right now, whereas you can get your hands on the Model 3 in a couple of months, or a Model Y. So that's going to factor into what you need to run as well. So it's well worth checking it out.